So if that looks good,
yes,
we'll begin.
and I forgot to mention, if anybody has questions during the presentation, please enter them in the Q&A box, and we'll try to get to them when there's a good point in the presentation.
Perfect. So today we'll cover different areas of your financial house that needs to be reviewed before you begin your retirement. And on our agenda today is first item, we'll see the difference between your accumulation stage and an income stage in life, which usually happens after you retire, the income stage. The second item we'll review is 375 retirement strategy with potential hypothetical examples. And I will explain what 3, 7, and 5 means. And the third one, we'll see what next steps you need to take in order to prepare yourself for retirement. Ideally, this presentation will bring up thoughts about where you might be lagging or maybe where you have not looked at, and address those things before you actually retire. 3-7-5 strategy, transition from accumulation to income. We'll talk about 3 levels of retirement expenses, also 7 sources of retirement income. We'll discover and uncover, which sources are available to most people, and you can check again against your own financials to see what sources are available to you personally. And 5 options for making income cover all your expenses. And we'll look into certain examples of a hypothetical client to see what those sources might be and how you can cover your expenses by the income sources available to you specifically. All of us at some point of time will face these 3 questions. Will I have enough to retire when I want to retire? Will I run out of money or income in retirement? And how will inflation affect my retirement income? Inflation has been in the headlines for the last 6 months, and everybody concerned about inflation. People ask about inflation all the time, and inflation has been a huge deal to retirees, because when you're working, most of the time your income increases with inflation. Your employer raised your income in general based on inflation expectations. When you retired, you need to create this inflation hedge yourself, and that become a problem. If your portfolio, your assets do not grow with inflation, you in reality depleting your capital. So idea is, how do we protect ourselves against inflation now, which is easier when we're working, and later on in retirement. Retirement readiness or not. So every person understands that Social Security will only cover 1/3 of your income, usually in retirement. Very rarely we see people can just live on Social Security without additional influx of income stream. The examples do exist. Some people move to different countries with the lower income requirements. They go to Mexico, they go to maybe Costa Rica and other places, this way they shrink their income in the needs, the expectations of assets. But most of us will probably end up retiring near our children or in the same area we're familiar with, and we are dealing with the higher expenses over the Social Security income we will collect. And because of that, we need to know how much do we really need to save, invest, and what is enough for us to keep our assets supporting our lifestyle for the rest of our life. So assuming that there are some limited options of improving your financial situation, we will look into where do you start thinking about it, what needs to happen now before you retire in order to have a successful retirement. And in general, you would start at least 10 to 15 years before retirement date. Even better, you start now. Even if you're a student that ready to graduate, or you just started your first job, starting now will ensure that you will be in a retirement mode sooner than later. You can continue working, but you can be financially secure. So let's look at two stages, accumulation stage, and I don't know our audience, I don't see the people right now, so I don't know how many already retired, how many are ready to get retired soon, and how many are still working and will be retiring 10 years plus. But I will address the major issues that facing most of us is knowing the difference between our accumulation stage and retirement income stage. So when you're in accumulation stage, you are actively increasing your capital. Your financial objective is to accumulate enough assets to sustain yourself in retirement. And that number of assets, it's very different depending on your desires and retirement lifestyle. And every time I plan for retirement, I look at those numbers with my client. I look to see what makes sense, how much they need. I don't create a cookie cutter approach to that. I want to see what every person needs. Some people retire in their 50s, others retire in the 70s. So it's a very, very different. Every person is like a snowflake. It's very unique, and we need to make sure we tailor our investment strategies and retirement strategy to that person. Asset allocation, portfolio allocation, risk preferences, how your portfolio should look like. What is asset allocation? Is what type of investment vehicles you employ inside of your accounts, inside of your portfolio to grow your assets. Are they optimal? Are they cost effective? Are they tax effective? And time horizon. Do you know or do you anticipate where you'll be, where and when you will be retiring? How does your assets will support that retirement date? So all of these questions needs to be asked before you pull the trigger, before you said, this is it, I'm out of the workforce, I will be living on my savings. So in accumulation stage, this is the set of questions we usually ask yourself. How much is enough? How much will I need? Will it be enough for me? Is there will be any extras, any discretionary I can spend money on? And is there any money will be left for my heirs, for my kids? Once we address all of these questions, we're pretty much preparing ourselves for the income stage. Once we know we're on track, once we know we're accumulating in a proper way, once we know we're not paying enough taxes, only what's necessary, then we will be ready to transition into income stage over time. And let's imagine the income stage is here, and we already now know that we will not outlive our assets. We know our safe withdrawal rate from our savings and investments. And we know, however, there is one thing that will not be known is, what, the end date is. And I actually approach it very differently. I say that we always plan to get the highest expected life meaning your expected lifespan by Social Security tables could be 87. But being as a financial planner, I like to plan safer. So I would say that I would plan for somebody to live at least till 92, 95. And if that long enough time horizon allow us to still stretch our assets, that's a safe assumption to make. So my life expectancy for most of my retirees would be beyond 90 to make sure that we don't cut ourselves short. I will check in quickly on the questions. If we don't have too many, then I will move on. Would like to know how fee for a plan work, approximate cost in typical case, and ongoing maintenance. Yes, we will address that, and at the end of presentation, I'm happy to explain in general how it works with most planners and in the industry, and also specifically to us. All right, let's look into our next one. We'll talk about 3 levels of retirement expenses, 7 sources of retirement income, and options to align income and our needs. So first, let's look at the expenses. The first basic needs, we call it survival, right? Expenses that called non-discretionary. It would be your utility bills, medical bills, maybe mortgage payments, property taxes, your groceries, all your medical insurance premiums. These are your survival needs. I call them non-negotiables. We need to have them, and usually majority of these expenses are covered by a guaranteed income stream, which is your Social Security and or pension. So these and necessities needs to be covered with the income stream that guaranteed no matter what. And if they're aligned together perfectly, I'm very satisfied with the plan because I know we don't have any big events that might wipe some part of your portfolio, and then we don't have money to pay for necessities. So the desired expenses are different. We call them lifestyle extras. What could that be? That could be buying an RV at the beginning of your retirement, maybe buying a second home, maybe making gifts to your children while you're around, making other type of donations to organizations. So something that you really want to do, it drives your values, you feel happy about it, you feel that you're doing something for the society and that fulfilled your life. We spent quite a bit of time talking about it because that extras potentially can bring your life satisfaction on a higher level. And I spent quite a bit of time talking about those and making sure we can afford those. And the last type of expense is not really an expense. It's just what funds do we want to leave for your beneficiaries? What's important for us to have by end of the life? What kind of legacy do you want to leave? Do you want to leave something particular? Do you have a dollar amount in mind? Do you have particular people in mind that's important to you? So this is something we also can plan on. Obviously, people who have a tighter budget might not have a lot of legacy, but they might have something else. They might say, well, I would like to donate my proceeds from my home sale to particular charities or to my children. So we'll talk about that, what's important. But in general, this is three types of expenses we will discuss as preparing you for retirement. We'll travel the initial few years to experience different cultures. How do you find planners for expats? So if you're asking about travel expenses, we'll travel the initial few years to experience. So a lot of people travel, especially when you retire, usually you're in your 60s, right? And we know from this beautiful golden age of 60 till you reach sometime age of 78, this is your prime time to be active. You're still full of energy, you still want to do a lot of things. As we get older, our perspectives on things change. So I've noticed after age of 80, most of my clients don't want to travel as much. They want to spend more time as the family, in their home. So yes, travel expense is one of the expenses we budget for. It will be our desired bucket, and we definitely put it part of the plan. I apologize if I didn't answer your question because it's asking how do I find planners for experts. We can talk offline. I'm not sure what that means. Just send me an email, okay? All right, moving on. 7 sources of income. So let's look at that. First is Social Security. Remember, we talked about covering the basics, right? So that will be your base source of income. The beauty of Social Security, if somebody living till age of 80 plus, they will collect over $1 million in general and total Social Security benefits if they start in their normal retirement age. So Social Security is a huge source of income. The good news, it's a guaranteed income. I don't believe current retirees will ever see any Social Security income decreases. I believe whoever is working might be not getting Social Security later in life, maybe by age of 68, 70, but the current retirees do have a budget in the government system and they will be paid out as promised. So this is a great source of income, usually inflation adjusted, which is also helpful for us to keep our survival expenses up to the standard, right? So the next one is employer-sponsored plans. It's our 401k, 403b, 457. Those are those balances of the accounts we have created while working and making pre-tax contributions. So anything that's taken out of those plans is fully taxable. We need to be aware of it. But that's another, usually second biggest source of income in retirement. The third one is the traditional IRAs. So basically the difference between traditional IRAs and qualified plans the only difference is one is your own plan, another one is an employer plan. But the way they're taxed is the same. And in general, people, once they retire, they take money out of their 401k and roll it into their own IRA. It becomes one bucket, and we call it qualified retirement bucket. Another bucket called Roth IRA. This is our tax-free bucket. Tax-free bucket means that any money that we'll put in, we'll put after tax, but the beauty is everything grows in that bucket tax-free. Example is you put in 100,000 over the years into your Roth account year after year, and then account grew and double in value 10 years after. Now you have $200,000 available for distributions at zero tax. Fantastic account to have. Everybody should be looking into establishing that and making contributions if possible. Non-qualified assets. Basically, non-qualified assets means all your brokerage account, mutual funds, CDs, bonds, stocks, everything that has not been invested in the retirement assets. And that bucket is extremely important. Why? Because it gives you an ability to tap into your resources without additional tax liability. Usually, if you take money from CDs, there's very little interest, right? If you take money out of your stocks, you need to be concerned, of course, about capital gains. Nevertheless, other than that, it's a fairly liquid and fairly cost-effective structure. So this is a great account to establish. I always encourage everybody to have this bucket, because if you don't have this non-qualified asset of savings, the only sources of income will be traditional IRA and your 401k, which is fully taxable. So in order for us to control your tax bracket, we need to have three sources of income: IRA or 401k, Roth IRA, and your non-qualified assets. We call them brokerage account, trust account, this type of accounts. A lot of people redefine retirement. They would like to work while they're fully retired, part-time, maybe on a very occasional basis. Some of the people in the Bay Area consult. A lot of people in high tech, when they retire, they're still doing some sort of consulting. I see it all the time. It's great if you like to do it. If you don't want to do it, that's okay, but that's another sources of income to supplement your retirement lifestyle. Especially if somebody retiring in their 50s, this could be a great additional source of income to rely on without depleting your assets quick enough. And the last one is welfare and charity. Not desired as a source of income. It does exist, but we hope we will avoid using the government welfare system and will be self-sustainable in the future. So now we covered all sources of income. Let's look at the hypothetical scenarios. So Ken and Patty at retirement, let's see what they've done and how they have accumulated their assets. There are certain worksheets I can share with you if you're interested on this. We will go over just a regular example, very simple, straightforward. So they're both 66. The combined Social Security benefits are $2,000, very low, but I'm not going to change the number. Right now, Social Security benefits that's available to people usually range between $2,200 per person to about $3,700, depending how long you worked and what kind of income you have earned. A defined benefit pension, one of them worked for let's say UPS, and UPS pays benefits in form of pension. And I see the questions coming in, so I will answer them as they go in about a few minutes. So let's look at other financials. They have home mortgage, none, so zero liabilities. IRA, including rollover, is $500,000, and savings portfolio, investment portfolio, is $400,000. So they have close to $900,000 worth of assets, liquid assets, besides their house. Estimated annual retirement expenses: survival expense 36, desire 20. They also desire to leave some legacy for their children. So let's see how we can reposition this very simple, straightforward portfolio and also their financial pictures to find the sources of income for them and make sure they do not run out of money. So let's take a look. So right now, Social Security, which is $24,000, will cover their survival needs. That's what we talked about. They also will start taking required minimum distribution at some age. By the way, now it's age of 72, but they will, Patty will take her pension benefits over the amount of $6,000 from UPS the minute she retired. So she just retired and she decided to turn on her pension benefits from UPS. That's additional source of income. And then they also have $400,000 in an annuity at 5% return. So that will also fund them with additional $6,000 for the rest of their life. And now all of their income is covered by the sources. So they have $36,000 survival needs, and it's coming from a guaranteed income sources, which is fantastic because whatever guarantees to come as an income will cover whatever they must pay for the rest of their life. What about the rest? What about their desired $20,000 for travel, for gifting, for some additional expenses? So we will see how we will arrange that. So let's take a look. So now people who would like to continue working can make a choice not to take money out of their IRAs till they're 72. The benefits of it is you will allow your retirement accounts to grow tax deferred for longer time and push out tax payments later. If you have a source of income besides your, let's say, if you don't want to work part-time, then you probably will start taking some IRA distributions, either now voluntarily or as RMDs. I'm sure everybody probably heard of RMDs, what it is, but just to remind the audience, required minimum distributions is the percentage of your total retirement accounts between your 401k and your IRAs, pre-tax money that needs to be taken out on an annual basis once you reach certain age. The age right now is 72. It went up from 70 and a half a year ago. And now once you reach 72, you need to take out about 3.5% from your overall pre-tax bucket, which is your IRA, 401k, 403b, 457 plans, and take it out as cash. You don't have to spend it. You can move it back into your non-qualified asset bucket, or you can put it in your savings account. But unfortunately, you have to report it on your tax return. And if you need the money, great. But if you don't, now you're facing a larger tax bill because you just reported that additional distributions from your retirement account that is fully taxable. So I usually tell my clients, if you have a very nice cash flow from your non-retirement accounts, from your annuities, from your supplemental income, do not take money out of IRA till later on. 72 would be the latest. And some people say, well, I don't need as much money to take out. In this case, if you're charitably inclined, we can send a charitable donations from your IRA account directly once you reach RMD age, and that will allow you not to report the charitable donation as a distribution from your IRA that will be taxable. It's a great strategy. A lot of people take advantage of it, and they reduce your total RMD that's are taxable. So RMDs still need to be taken, but how much of it will be taxable will be less by the amount of money you contributed toward a qualified charitable organization. So now, two sources of income in retirement, it could be potentially part-time work if you desire, and also the IRA distribution. That's kind of a second source for us. You see here, we do not touch your Roth IRA, and I'll explain to you why. And also the remaining, remember that your other money in non-qualified accounts still will be another source of income. So I usually look at your tax bracket now when you retire, and the tax bracket is 72, and we can make a decision. What would be the best way to distribute your additional assets between all of your accounts to still keep your tax bracket low? So there'll be some engineering needs to be done, but usually we will take some money from IRA account, some money from your non-qualified assets, and some money from your 401ks and 403bs. I'll try to leave Roth account alone for emergencies or for legacy planning. Why? Because Roth account is probably one of the best accounts to leave out to children. Why? That account does not have any tax liability. If it's inherited by your children or by anybody in your family, they now have to take required minimum they have to deplete this account over 10 years, but they don't have to pay any taxes on it. So inheriting Roth account carries zero tax liability and allow you to use those funds for your expenses without accruing additional tax bills. It used to be that you can stretch your Roth accounts over your lifetime distributions. Now the law changed. In fact, law changed for traditional IRAs as well, because they said in any inherited asset from IRA or Roth has to be taken out within 10 years after you inherited it. And IRA, regular IRA, you have to pay tax. So if you inherited $1 million of IRA, you have to report either $250,000 or whatever amount you're taking in a 10 years time horizon, or 200,000, or you can take it toward the last year of the 10-year time period, the full amount, which will not be smart because then your tax bracket explodes. But the Roth account has the same, unfortunately, same structure. You have to take the money out of the inherited Roth IRA within the next 10 years, either lump sum in incremental payments. IRS did not give us guidance how much you need to take out. There is no minimums so far, I haven't heard, but you have to take that out. So Roth IRA, great sources of inheritance, and also great way to pay for unexpected, let's say a roof, need to be changed. You don't want to take money out of IRA or qualified account because it's fully taxable. We'll pull it from the Roth account. You want to make a big travel, maybe once every 5 years, we'll take it out of our Roth account. So that's our structure for the taking income out. Now, how do we improve it, and how is there a potential to somehow navigate your retirement without paying too much tax and without depleting your assets? There's a few considerations. The first one is, the most important is what your lifestyle would look like in retirement. Do you want to stay in the same house? If you want to sell, how much capital gains you will occur? Is it a good idea to sell? So you need to first determine where would you really want to stay and how much it will cost you to stay in that area. And that determines everything else after that. We will see what kind of sources of income you will have to match them with your requirements. We do a lot of planning, different scenarios to see, what if you do this? What if you move? What if you stay? What if your expenses go up? What if you have some long-term care needs that we haven't planned on? Is your retirement still sustainable, and you still continue to accumulate assets and have sufficient money to continue staying in retirement mode without going back to work? So the scenario optimization is important. Looking at what can go wrong is very important, especially at times when your health might change. Unfortunately, what if we lose spouse? How do your income will change? So all of those considerations are on the table when we're discussing your retirement and optimization. I would not adjust your expenses. I would always keep them on a high level for security, for your personal financial safety, and also your life expectancy. I usually keep it longer for a reason. So I give this financial plan a little bit of leeways. If something goes wrong, we have enough cushion to withstand the changes that happen in the marketplace. All right, so I will not cover this is called sequence of return risk. It's basically saying that, depending if you, so the one kind of big summary of this page is, when you're getting ready to retire, first 3 years before retirement is critical to see how you are doing risk-wise, not taking excessive risk, because the minute you retire and that the market goes down in value, it's going to be very difficult to grow your portfolio, because you don't have any more influx of income coming to prop up your portfolio. So you need to be very careful 3 years before retirement, in anticipation, what if there's a bear market year after I retired and your portfolio value goes down and you're taking distributions from the portfolio. So you need to be very careful about that. So a sequence of return risk basically means, if you to retire year one and your portfolio down 17%, you will have by far less money, potentially can run out of money by year 20, where if your year 1, you made 12% rate of return and you didn't experience negative returns soon after, that your portfolio value is very different. So it does exist that we need to look at and control the risks few years before you retire. Safe distribution rate, I will cover it very quickly and then I'll address, I see we have a few questions, so I'm very happy to address. Safe distribution rates depends on few things, and I'm not going to go into formula, but I will say that based, I believe it was one of the business schools, I don't know if it was Chicago School of Business or someone else, develop a formula saying if you take the distributions from your overall portfolio, in this case for Patty and her husband, it was $900,000, between 4% and 6%. So in $1 million portfolio, if you take between 40,000 and 60,000 a year, you're in a safe distribution rate. However, you need to have an ability to adjust that percentage based on inflation and also based on how your portfolio is doing. If your portfolio is doing really well, you can take 6%. When your portfolio is down, you might need to take 4%. So we will need to have an ability to adjust, meaning we also need to adjust our expenses. So we talked about adjustments. We talk about what we can afford to increase and decrease depending on the portfolio performance. So we talk about safe distribution channel between 4 and 6%. And it changes year to year. So we looked into that as well. Now, this is showing you maximum initial withdrawal rates and how your portfolio should be invested. If you want only to take 4% out of your portfolio, you probably can afford to keep, you know, more than 50% on bonds or something conservative. If you want to have a higher distribution rate, you need to start investing more in stocks. If you require to take 5% out of your portfolio in order to support your lifestyle, you need to invest 80% of your money in stocks and 20% on bonds. And you would need to ask yourself, is that a comfortable risk level for me? So what I'll do right now is I will address the questions and then there'll be just a couple of steps for us to summarize. So let me see. Travel expenses I covered. I invest in index funds via my Roth IRA. Is this the same as NQA? If not, then what's the difference? NQA, non-qualified annuity. I'm not sure what is NQA. Can you please?
I think it's referring to the non-qualified assets.
No qualified assets. Okay. So non-qualified assets and Roth IRA. So let me clarify a little bit. So any retirement account, either it's a Roth account or 401k or your rollover IRA, they're just the names of the accounts that specify whether it's pre-tax or after-tax money that went in. What's inside of each account, it's totally your choice, which means it could be in index funds, that's what you mentioned, and index funds can sit in a Roth account, they can also sit in a non-qualified asset account. So what's inside of those retirement accounts, it's totally up to you. You can choose index funds, you can choose active funds, you can choose ETFs that cover specific areas. So the investment choices inside of each of this type of accounts, it's completely up to you. And you can choose whatever you want. I like index funds for some of the accounts. I like active management for others. So it depends, right? Let's say if I need to invest money in bonds as part of my portfolio allocation, I don't want to invest in index funds. Index bond funds usually very rigid and they do not adjust with inflation. They don't adjust with what's happening with interest rates. So I would invest in active managed bond fund. But maybe for US large company, I would use allocation. I would use an index fund. So index fund is just a vehicle, investment vehicle inside of each individual account you have, whether it's Roth or non-qualified account.
Larissa, could you explain the term non-qualified asset?
Right. So great question. Thank you, Lisa. So non-qualified assets is basically an account, any account outside of your retirement accounts. Retirement accounts would be your IRA, 401k, 403b, for nonprofit organization, 457. That's all of your retirement accounts. Pre-tax rollover IRA, all of these retirement accounts. And then after-tax retirement accounts is a Roth account, Roth IRA or Roth 401k, right? So we have, this is called qualified. Why they're qualified? Because there is a law called ERISA rules. ERISA rules governs how the retirement accounts are qualified. So we call all retirement accounts qualified, and anything outside of retirement accounts will be called not qualified. That's your brokerage accounts, investment accounts, that's your trust accounts named under your trust. Everything that has nothing to do with the retirement accounts invested outside of them would be called non-qualified. Makes sense, right? Okay. So let's see. If taking taxes into account, the 20K desired and survival of 36 would be less, correct? How do I remedy this? Great question, great question. So the $36,000 ideally, which we didn't cover, should also include your taxation, because taxes are due no matter what, right? We know what's certain in life, taxes and death. So we have to count for it. So the way I look at it, I usually would say we need $50,000 to cover our living expenses, our survival number, right? $50,000 for family of 2 in retirement. Then I want to have additional $20,000 or $30,000 in desired expenses. No, now I'm at $80,000. And then I say, well, based on the income we just calculated of all the sources of income, we run a projection, your tax liability is going to be at least $20,000. Let's say 15% of $15,000 would be federal tax and 5% would be state tax. So our total running budget is actually $100,000. 20 of it is your taxes. 50 of it is your survival expenses, is 30 of it is your desired expenses. But taxes are as part of your overall cash flow planning. We need to take it into consideration because the sources of income you have, that's 36, will be subject to taxation. Maybe not all of it. Roth IRA distributions are not. Some brokerage account distributions are not, depending on what you're taking out. But some of it will be taxable. Social Security, pension benefits, 401k, all of it goes to your 1040 tax return and get taxed. So we take that into account and run it as the part of your overall cash flow needs in retirement. But it is an expense. All right, let's see. I think I have 2 more. How should we plan for long-term care expenses? Great question. It's a process. So basically, there is 3 ways to cover your long-term care. One is called be self-insured. Second is called obtain an insurance policy and pay as you go, like auto policy. And the third one is to buy some sort of contract, or like a life insurance contract or annuity contract that has a long-term care benefits on it. And I'll explain all 3 really briefly because we have a few other questions. So self-insuring means I have $4 million in liquid assets, and I know if I need to go to a facility, I'll just use all of this money to pay for my best care. And I am confident with that. Kids will get less money, but it doesn't matter. I'm self-insuring myself. I have a great flexibility. I can spend on anything I want and I'm comfortable. That's one way, being self-insured, right? The second way is to say, you know what, I'm going to buy a coverage that, fairly flexible. I can go to any facility. I will have nursing care. I will have memory care, and I will be paid if I'm qualified, which means I cannot do 2 out of 6 daily living activities. I'll be qualified. The benefits will start and I will get paid $400 a day to cover all of these expenses. So I pay premiums for this kind of insurances, like I pay premiums for auto insurance. And as long as I have an insurance, I have this benefits. Advantages is great policy, pay as you go. The disadvantages is long-term care companies been raising their premiums without announcement. They just send you a letter saying premiums go up 30%, premiums go up 20%. And that's what retirees facing. They said, oh, I thought my expenses will be at 60,000. Now I am out of sudden paying by so much more into this benefits, into the premiums for the benefits to keep them up. So that's an issue. I had it with my clients. It's been a big deal. So we need to review it and see how can we mitigate that risk of increased premiums. And the third option is to get a lump sum contribution into one of the contracts, and there is very, very many of them. And they will guarantee you all death benefits, whatever you put in that annuity contract. And then also they might double the death benefits for you while you're still around if you need long-term care. This is just one example how it works. There could be many various ways that annuity or a life insurance policy works. So you're basically getting some death benefits up front for long-term care by creating this kind of investment or annuity contract. All right, so let's take a look. We'll see that besides long-term care, what are you supposed to invest in I bonds and outside retirement accounts? I bonds are fine. I think some of them actually pay pretty good interest lately. So as long as they're keeping up with inflation and they're safe, I have no problem with that. It sounds like a good investment as long as you have something that keeping you up with inflation. It pays 3 to 5% interest. Great. If it pays only 1 or 2, then it is not going to work because inflation is higher than a bond interest. Okay, so I am a worker and I don't make much more than what I need to survive. Where can I go, or who can I talk to for a lower cost retirement planning? Great question, Christopher. So you can go to a Financial Planning Association, FPA. That's the organization that I've been representing for years, and they have a lot of volunteers that can help you. The volunteers basically will help you where you are, and most of them do not charge or charge very minimal. And usually our volunteers at FPA Silicon Valley, we give some consultations at no charge. So you would need to go to FPA SV Silicon Valley, and there will be a pro bono area where you can ask questions and look for volunteers. Also, Financial Planning Foundation, that's a national organization, that also might have some volunteers that can help you with basic financial plan. All right. All right, let me see if I covered everything. And the last one I will address is the fees for the plan, how they work, what the typical cases look like, and ongoing maintenance fees. And I will be very brief about it. The financial planning fees range from, it's like estate planning fees, very different. It depends on the complexity of your plan. Somewhere between probably $1,200 to $5,000, right? If you're very, simple plan and it takes only a couple hours to review and present, it's probably going to be a couple hours worth of work for the planner. If it's a lot of assets, estate plan, and anything else related to your portfolio, the planner would usually quote you. I usually meet with the person for the first time just to discuss, to see if we're on the same page, if we can collaborate, if there is a fit. And if we both agree that this is the good fit for us, we can engage in a financial planning. And then at that time, I give them an estimate. That will be so many hours, and this is what I'm going to accomplish for you, and this is what kind of outcomes and analysis you will receive. And if the person sees the value in the plan, then we will engage into the planning. And then based on our outline, we'll try to charge them what we promise. It's usually that or less. And we will deliver them a plan. And a typical case, very hard to say. Again, it could be from what I said, $1,200 to $5,000. I would say probably you're kind of thinking about $2,000 would be kind of your base case, maybe $2,500. There is probably for me, there is no ongoing fees. If we, after the plan, agreed that it makes sense for me to help you implement the plan, manage your assets, then we will then talk about how that looks like. And then we will charge assets under management fees to help you with all of the areas of financials we discussed and outlined in your plan. Some planners might charge like a retainer to see you once a year and update your plan, and then you will probably just make all the implementations on your own. I don't work that way, so I can speak for them. All right, so I think that's all we have. Anything else, Lisa, you see I didn't answer? Yeah, it doesn't look like, Lisa, you're muted. So it looks like we completed all our questions here. I don't see anything else coming in. So I would like to thank everybody for being on the line with us today. Hopefully you gathered some information, or at least it created some source of additional questions you might want to ask yourself or some other professionals. But I'll take it to you, Lisa, back. I think we finished with the presentation and the Q&As.
Thank you so much, Larissa. It's very informative. I did put in one of the in the Q&A box an answer to the long-term strategy, long-term care question. Our next program will be on developing a long-term care strategy. So if people are interested in that, that'll
right. Well, thank you. That's great. Right, and somebody asked the last question. I don't know.
Okay.
Asking if you how would you balance between non-qualified assets account and IRA account as your 24-year-old right now? It depends on your income. It really doesn't depend on your age. If you in a high, let's say you're 24 and in your higher tax bracket because you're an engineer, young engineer, then I will focus on putting majority of your money in 401k, and only after that in non-qualified assets. But if your tax bracket is not very high, I would focus on putting your money in a Roth account first, then a non-qualified brokerage account and buy some stocks, and only after that in a pre-tax money. Because if you're in a low bracket, putting money in a pre-tax account does not benefit you versus Roth account is more beneficial. So it depends on your tax bracket, not really the age. All right. Okay, well, thank you so much, Lisa, and all the audience, all the people. Great questions. Everybody who joined, I appreciate it. It was early on Friday, so that was great. Yeah, looking forward to more gatherings, more workshops, and sharing ideas.
Okay, yes. Thank you for presenting, Larissa.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.